All right, welcome into the 305 guys on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick on the 5 Reasons Sports. We got Alex Donno. You can follow him at Alex Donno. We're sponsored here, as always, by Prize Picks, official fantasy partner of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, 5 on the Floor, and the 305 guys, 3 yards per carry as well, if you're a listener to that show. Check them out at prizepicks.com. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Put down $5. You get $50 to play right away. Not only can you play the 3 NBA games tonight, but they also have a contest going for the NFL draft. So they're basically giving away free money for lineups, so essentially promo funds. So they've got all kinds of quirky things on there. You can check out like how many times Mel Kiper says one thing or another, where Travis Hunter gets drafted over and under a certain position, but much funnier stuff than that. So check it out. It's prizepicks.com. Use the code 5. Get your $50. Help us continue to provide content and enter the NFL contest, which is free for tonight. So go to Prize Picks and do that today. Hello, Cap for Life. We've got our usual listeners here for the episode. We did the Heat and Panthers yesterday. The Heat, of course, lost game 2 and made it close. Yeah. But ultimately,
it was fun early on. It was fun for a while,
and then it was fun kind of late when they made their run. But ultimately, nothing from the starting front court last night. And we got into that in a couple episodes of 5 on the Floor. And we'll have another one coming up. But we're going to talk NFL tonight. Today, Dolphins are scheduled to pick 13th in this draft. We don't know necessarily that they'll make that selection. There's a lot of buzz, Alex, about them possibly trading down. I want to call this up because our guy CK Parrott. We have 3 Dolphins podcasts now on the network. We've got 3 yards per carry, which was the original one. We've got Alan Poupart's podcast, All Dolphins, which is also part of our network on the podcast side, and also Inside Leverage. They did a show last night. But our guy, CK Parrott, Chris Kaufman, one of the OGs from 3 yards per carry, he's right about a lot of this stuff. And so he posted this up this morning, round 1 draft preview. Most logical choices. Defensive tackle Mason Graham from Michigan. That's the one that may be slipping. We'll see. I don't think he's going to make it to 13, but if he does, I think you take him. Kenneth Grant, Walter Nolan. Those are the other DTs he's talking about. Most likely pick, though, he says, the cornerback Jahdae Barron. I know there was another cornerback we'll get to in a second who was supposed to go to the Dolphins, but there's some conversation about his knees. The most likely offensive lineman, offensive guard Gray Zabel. And then this one, he says, probably too much medical baggage. Cornerback Will Johnson, that has never stopped Chris Greer before, as CK well knows.
Right. And also what wasn't, I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm quoting this wrong, but I saw a clip in my social media feed of Drew Rosenhaus, and I think Will Johnson is the one that he predicted. And obviously, Drew, I don't even know if Will Johnson is one of his clients or not, but regardless of that, Drew is very well connected with it. He's not. So Drew is very well connected with this stuff. And I don't know if Drew is just trolling us because he knows like Dolphin fans will love it that you've got a guy with medical concerns. I mean, I don't think he's been healthy in like 3 years, Will Johnson, but if Drew is going to make that prediction on draft day, I'm certainly going to listen that Will Johnson could end up being the guy. And when, as you said, has medical baggage ever stopped Chris Greer from making a pick?
Was Jalen Phillips ever healthy in college? No. He took him anyway. No. He's been really good in the pros, but he hasn't been healthy in the pros either. So
do you think it's because when you've got a player with injury history, Greer feels like he's getting away with something. Like he feels like, all right. So you're telling me I can get this guy with an injury history at 13, where if he was fully healthy coming out of college, would probably be a top 5 pick. I think that's the way the gears turn in his mind.
He's got no arms and no legs, but he's really gifted. So we're going to get more out of him. He's projected later in the draft. It's funny that CK doesn't think he's going to take him when CK has been the most critical, if you listen to 3 yards per carry, of the way that Greer always goes after injured players. So in date here calls it the dented can approach, which is a good way to look at it. First thing, I don't think he's going to get away from picking a guy with a medical history. Unless Ross has told him don't do that. Yeah, I think he'll try to take the guy he thinks has the most upside. Now, there's a lot of pressure on him to take an offensive lineman or to take a corner. Now, we know that Jalen Ramsey has not been traded yet, but clearly it's moving in that direction. It might just happen after June 1st, which really means that the Dolphins don't have a credible cornerback. I mean, they have Kohu, who's really a third corner. And so they don't really have anybody at that spot. I mean, Nick Needham's even signed somewhere else. Like they don't They're very thin. I mean, Fuller's gone. Very thin at that position. But here's the point that CK makes as it comes to positions. And I saw Barry credited him on this as well, is that the defensive line market in free agency is picked clean. There's nothing left. The cornerback market still has players who may not be elite, but they could step in and potentially start. And so that's why he's leaning towards the idea of taking a defensive lineman and plugging the hole at corner in free agency. I guess it comes down to this, okay? And we always talk about best player available, Alex, or position of need. Do you think this is going to be a good team this year?
No. If I have to give you a yes or a no, I mean, the answer is always more complicated than that, but I don't think they're going to be a playoff team this year, and that's how I would separate good from bad. So I will say no.
Okay. In light of that, forget who's in charge and the fact that it seems like Grier has been promised some kind of other role if this doesn't work out or whatever. In light of the fact we don't think they're going to be very good, does it lend itself to taking the highest upside player instead of, say, plugging a need? I mean, because I don't know how many needs they have a lot of needs to plug to be any good this season. I mean, they want to get rid of their number one receiver and they want to get rid of their number one corner, right? We don't know how many games Tua is going to play.
Yeah. Well, so and also I think you're right about that. I think if you're, I don't know if the Dolphins feel this way internally, but I pretty strongly feel that they're not going to be a great team this coming season. So I respect your point there that maybe you do take a player who you think is the BPA, the best player available, even if it may not be plugging the most urgent hole. But I also think in that note, if you do, 13 is somewhat prime real estate in the draft in terms of maybe teams wanting to trade up for certain players. A lot of Dolphin fans don't want to hear this, but if you really are taking more of a long-term approach, like addressing more needs, like the Dolphins as it stands have 10 draft picks, but they may want to take that up to a dozen or a baker's dozen. Like you might even shop offers to trade down. But I also think if the Dolphins were to trade down tonight, then that would probably be a sign that Chris Grier feels pretty good about his job security, right? If he's maybe passing up a splashier option who's available at number 13. So I think that could be an option that's on the table as well.
Yeah, I think it could be. I think on the other side of this, I want to look at what they did last year to see kind of, how they approach that and how it's worked out so far. But I think this. I think that Ross has – this is my sense of how things have played out in free agency. I think Ross has basically given Grier assurance that he's going to have some kind of role in the organization, so he doesn't have to force things now. And at the same time, I think he's put some guardrails in. I think it's both. That's what it feels like to me with what they've done in free agency, not kind of going after the big fish, the idea of possibly moving Ramsey. I know Hill's a more complicated situation, but the idea of not extending to a further, which could have cleared up more cap for them to make a run at more players. They didn't do that, so they haven't kind of put themselves into the Tua game further than they already are, I guess. It feels like there's a lot of sort of prove it stuff now, but he's at least assured Grier that, look, don't do anything desperate, right? Like, and then we see this sometimes, like as we saw this in the NBA, there are a bunch of GMs who have gotten fired who were allowed to make moves at the deadline. I mean, I look at David Griffin in New Orleans who traded Ingram and others, and it always strikes me like if you're going to fire the GM, fire him before he makes a major move that may compromise the franchise. In some way.
And let me add something else. I going through, like, I've looked at a lot of different, mock drafts and the mock drafts like change a lot. Like a player that Miami had been linked with, frequently through much of the mock draft process was an offensive tackle, Kelvin Banks out of Texas, who's now suddenly getting mocked to go 6 to the Raiders by everybody. So suddenly a player that people thought would follow the Dolphins no longer falls to the Dolphins. But, and CK, I think for that reason did not include him in his list, which is probably smart because I don't think he's going to fall to 13. But I look over the names, and obviously I have injury concerns with Will Johnson, right? But every name that I look at, even including Will in certain ways, I could say it would be really, really difficult, assuming the Dolphins keep the 13th pick. It would be very difficult to come out of tonight thinking, wow, I think that they really screwed this up or they drafted a lemon. Now, you don't really know, of course, till 2 or 3 years down the road, but I just think this is a really deep first round, Ethan, and there's a lot of players available who should be available at 13 that could excite me, that could get me thinking, man, I think the Dolphins have added a really good one, which includes most of the players on that list for CK. Like if and the dark horses, if we allow ourselves to dream a little bit, if Tyler Warren probably won't, but if he falls to 13, the tight end out of Penn, you call him a tight end, but that dude's just a football player. Like you can have that guy do anything on the offense. You know, he's utility player, tremendous blocker, just a tremendous football player. You know, if he were to fall to 13 and the Dolphins were to, you know, have the opportunity to make that move, I will be doing cartwheels tonight.
Well, so would I, and I'm just curious how the fans would see that one, because to me, he's the most interesting wild card, and CK has him as a wild card there, dark horse, where I do think that fans would get most excited about the possibilities there, and you have Jonnu Smith, obviously, and so how he would use the two of them together. I've seen a lot of teams, again, just get a playmaker, even if it's a playmaker with size, right? And then you still have, you still have Devon Achane, you still have Waddle. We'll see what happens again with Hill. You've added Westbrook, who I like as a big receiver or a more physical receiver than what they've had in the past. It feels like there's a little bit more to work with there. We've seen tight ends or players who can go inside, outside, they can be game changers. There's no question. And McDaniel with a player like that, I think that would really give him a tool. And yet I still think some Dolphin fans would be like, okay, this is kind of a luxury item when we basically it's like, adding a new coat of paint to the house, flashy coat of paint when the foundation's all effed up, and that's why we've got like in Dade here saying, fix the trenches. I feel like this is a little bit of a fight between doing what's sexy and what's sensible tonight. But I would have a hard time passing on Tyler Warren. Like if Mason Graham's there, I think you take him. I don't think there's any question. Okay. I think there's no question. And you kind of deal with the cornerback later in the draft and also in the free agent market and whatever's left. If Tyler Warren's there, I think I can make a case both ways. It'd be more interesting for us. It'd be more interesting as, again, a player than say taking a guard. But again, this is between what's sexy and what's sensible on this team. All right. On the other side of this, I want to get to what they did last year and how you evaluate it. And then additionally, I just want to ask you what you think the biggest story of tonight is going to be in the NFL. I'm curious for your thoughts on that. Before we do, I mentioned houses. This is a segue. I mean, even if the foundation is strong, you get a storm that comes in and your house is not protected, it's going down, right? So check out All Pro Construction Builders. You can go to allproconstructionbuilders.com or All Pro Construction Builders on Instagram. Danny and his team, his family, they will take great care of you. They're based in Miami. They're Miami people, big Miami sports fans. But additionally, they can also serve Broward County and all the way down to Monroe County as well. So reach out to them, 305-484-4429. It's not hurricane season yet, but you really want to wait to do this till July or August? No. Get it done now. Reach out to them. Mention 5 reasons. 305 guys are 5 on the floor. And not only do you get the free estimate, but you also get 5.5% off your entire order. So, and then let us know that you did that too, because we like to help our sponsors out. So check them out. All Pro Construction Builders, allproconstructionbuilders.com. Get your house protected today. Let's go through last year and give me your 1-year grade on these picks. And context is necessary to a certain degree because some guys got more of a chance to play. And then it's also a question of who was available at the time. But it doesn't look like Greer's worst draft. I'll just leave it at that.
No, one of his better ones, I think.
Right. So Chop Robinson at 21. How would you grade that after that was in round 1? How would you grade that after one season?
I mean, I would give it a solid A or a B plus. I think that ended up being a really good pick. I'll stick with an A.
Yeah. I mean, I think the way he came on the last 8 weeks of the season, it wasn't just the sack numbers, but the pressure numbers. You can't really argue with it. He ended up playing in every game. I think he was active in every game, which again is significant for a rookie. I'm with you on that. I think that's worked out. I know there were some questions about him. There's some talk about motor, other things along those lines. I don't know. He looked, he looked like he was improving, and on a team that was missing Phillips last year, missing Chubb last year, he stepped up when there wasn't a whole lot else around him. So I think A- would be where it's at for me, particularly in light of how they've struggled to pick pass rushers recently. Whether it was Charles Harris. Or Deion Jordan. They right. So, I mean, I'll take it. Patrick Paul did not get much of an opportunity to play, but he will this year. Is that incomplete, I guess? Now that Armstead's not there?
I would say, well, you could go the incomplete route, but I would even go more in like the B area route, because I think Patrick Paul, and obviously like maybe an incomplete is fair because like we're yet to permanently plug him into that role, but with him now expecting to be the heir apparent, to your left tackle who was kind of temporarily retired for the last few years and is now retired for real. Like, so, I mean, It looks like Patrick Paul is someone who's going to fill a very important role on this team. And I like the player and I like the potential. So I'd like to optimistically give it a B or higher, but incomplete is probably fair.
Yeah, I think incomplete's fair. I mean, you had Terran Armstead playing last year very well on a knee that needed to be replaced.
Yeah,
we will see. I think the thing with Armstead finally being gone is at least there's no uncertainty week to week anymore. But whether or not you're going to get the competence that you got from him is a whole nother matter. Probably won't happen this season. Jalen Wright, I thought he looked good at times when he got opportunities, but didn't get a ton of opportunities. But now that Mostert's gone, I mean, not that Mostert played a big role this past season, I would expect him to. I would say C for now with potential for better.
Yeah. Well, the other thing to scrutinize about the Jalen Wright pick was that they traded up to get him, but it's another incomplete, I think, because losing Mostert is going to enhance his role. So maybe you could say, hey, trading up for him, they had the foresight to know that maybe they would be losing Mostert the following year. But I don't dislike the pick, but I think you put it under extra scrutiny because they traded up to get him.
Yeah, 249 yards and 3 receptions in 68 attempts. Drafted 120th overall, 4th round. The rest of the picks, Malik Washington showed the most, I would say, of these guys, right? I mean, you had Mo Kamara. Kamara I really liked coming into the draft, but he really did not get an opportunity or maybe just didn't earn one. Malik Washington, 14 games. He's going to be competing for that third receiver spot this year. I like him. He had 26 catches. Patrick McMorris, the DB, very little contribution. And Taj Washington didn't end up playing a game. But again, I mean, if you come up with it with two – the way I look at it, if you're not drafting real high and you have sort of the normal allotment of picks, if you come up with 2 solid starters, one with star potential, which I think Chop has – and you have a couple of other players who can be steady contributors. So maybe from that draft, it ends up being Malik Washington and Jalen Wright. Then it's an okay draft. It's a pretty decent draft, especially if you look comparing. I mean, again, we just did this exercise. You should check it out on 5reasonsports.com. But Hussam, myself, Eric Smith, and Alfredo went through it. And we tried to rank the top 25 draft picks in Miami Dolphins history, okay, based on where they were selected. And I'm telling you, we struggled to come up with any in the 2000s. Like, I mean, it was our top. I think of the top 25, we had 3 that were after 2000. If you're evaluating like last year's draft against some of the other drafts since that period of time, since 2000, since kind of Jimmy started to tail off towards the end of his tenure, last year's draft was fine. The problem is some of Greer's other drafts were not fine. So you can't repeat that this year. I'll ask you first thing. Let's do 2 things here. Your prediction, Alex, before we close, on who they end up picking, and then what do you think ends up being the biggest story of tonight in the NFL?
Oh man, I think that they are going to. I'd like to think they're going to get Mason Graham. That would require him falling to 13, the defensive tackle out of Michigan. So I'm going to give you, Ethan, my optimistic prediction that that's who the Dolphins are going to draft. So I'm going to stick with that until proven otherwise. If he doesn't fall to us, he doesn't fall to us.
I'm expecting a trade down, which makes the prediction a little bit more difficult.
Yeah,
I think a trade down, accumulate additional picks, because I think, again, when you're a team that doesn't think you're competing for anything significant this year, you try to accumulate the picks. So I would anticipate a trade down and probably take a guard. It's probably going to annoy most Dolphin fans, but I think I understand the reasoning for it, but Greer better get it right if that ends up being the case. I think you try to sit there as long as you can to see who falls to you, but then ultimately I could see them trading down right before the pick. the biggest story to me, and I know you're a Cam Ward guy, and he's going to go first overall, and obviously rave reviews and all that. And I think he's going to be successful. I'm curious how Tennessee surrounds him with talent. Shedeur Sanders is the biggest story tonight, right?
That's what I was going to say. 1,000,000% agree.
Yeah,
1,000,000%, because he's so polarizing, Ethan. Like you could see him potentially being, a top 10 or a top 5 pick, or you could see him having, the Aaron Rodgers type of draft experience where he's in the green room and it's like no one's taking him. And sometimes, like, I'll stand up for Shedeur a little bit because I know that I think some of the smear campaigns against him are a little bit out of control. I mean, this is someone I know he and Cam Ward are very tight and they work out together. And I think certain things with Shedeur's, not only his personality, but just given, who his father is and that whole situation, like, makes him a target for people out there. Like, you heard this anonymous assistant coach quote that was like, oh, he's not good at anything. He's so arrogant and he blames things on teammates. It was like the worst meeting we've ever had. It's like, well, I mean, either put your name behind it or keep your mouth shut. Like, anonymous, because you never know. Like, this could be smokescreen stuff, Ethan. You hear about an anonymous assistant coach smearing a guy. Is that someone who happens? Is that, does he want him to drop to his team? And so, but no, that's going to be the biggest story, no question. Like, as much as I love Cam Ward and I want people to celebrate his story of going from a 0-star recruit who ran a wing T offense in high school to, becoming 5 years later the #1 overall pick. Like, I'd like that. That is a big story, but I just think the polarizing nature of Shedeur Sanders makes that the story.
I do too. I don't think he's slipping out of the first round. I don't. I know there's been some conversation of that. Quarterbacks always get overdrafted, typically. I know you mentioned the Rodgers thing, but we've seen teams start to get panicky. And in fact,
even Rodgers, like, that was still first round, right? It was just way later. It was just like in the 20s, like way later than people expect.
Alex Smith went first, and then Rodgers dipped all the way down. But I could see a scenario, and I absolutely could see this, where Sanders slips out of the top 15, and some owner says to his GM, give up a future third and let's go get this guy. Because there's some franchises just want the attention too, and he's going to bring the attention. Some don't, but some do. And I could absolutely see Cleveland, particularly if they get their hands on Travis Hunter early, moving up. They need a quarterback. They're sort of recycling guys now. Now it's Flacco again. They've got others to go get that guy. And I know they had to deal with the Deshaun Watson experience, which they brought upon themselves, but I could absolutely see them doing that. So my guess is Shedeur is picked 16th. I don't even know who holds that pick. I'm saying somewhere in the late teens, and some team trades up actually to get him. And Aaron Andrews says going to be a Steeler or a Brown. I could see Steeler too, because it doesn't seem like they want to deal with Aaron Rodgers or what's going on.
Another guy I'm interested in, because his mocks have been all over the map, is Jackson Dart, the quarterback from Ole Miss. Like, I mean, that's one of the, fine player. He put up big numbers and everything. Like, I get it. I don't necessarily think he's like a top 15 pick worthy quarterback. It's like you said about quarterbacks' values getting inflated, and you see people sometimes in the top 10 mocking Jackson Dart and saying he's going to be taken before Shedeur and right behind Cam. So that's going to be another one of these wild cards tonight.
Well, sometimes we see these guys move up right before the draft and they don't turn out to be the best players. I got one example for you, because people are mocking Jackson Dart possibly to the Giants, and the Giants did this with Daniel Jones. They did this with Daniel Jones.
He might be another Daniel. Like, I could see that being a comp.
They did this with Daniel Jones. So the reality is nobody knows anything until after the players play, and then they say they knew everything. Alex, appreciate it. Check out our sponsors, All Pro Construction Builders. Also on this, we got plenty of content here on the YouTube channel. Messi and Company live episode tonight, 6:00. Huge match for Inter Miami. They're in Vancouver, maybe the biggest match since he's joined. He's joined the program there. So. That's at 6:00.
Would you say biggest match of Lionel Messi's career? Can we troll with that?
I would not say that. I could say that, but I I would be
Forget
wrong.
about the World Cup final. Forget about Champions League final. Inter Miami versus Vancouver. Finally, Lionel Messi is ready to step onto the biggest stage.
Yeah. I mean, they've been hiding him from the big competition all this time. That's all right. He'll still be back next week to drive his kid to Pinecrest in Fort Lauderdale, which he does on a regular basis. All right. We appreciate it. We appreciate our regulars on here, Broham, Aaron, Cap for Life, Indade. You guys are here with us all the time, so we appreciate all of you. And again, 8:05 tonight, live stream, Hussam, Eric Smith, Eric Wiedeke. I'm sure Alfredo will pop in there. I'll try to get CK on there. I'll be on there. And I'll definitely be on there with the Dolphins draft. So check us out on the YouTube channel tonight, starting at 8:05. Have a good one, everybody.